Hello, and welcome to today's Criterion Learning Series on Immersive Onboarding. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to cover onboarding from the setup of onboarding to actually using it as an employee and how it'll all work. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to switch over to my browser, where we'll be able to see this here. So here you can see my browser. Now, onboarding, of course, for the employee who's completing the onboarding is going to be done through self-service. However, as I mentioned, we're going to need to set some things up before we can actually use onboarding. So we'll go to our settings to do that. Of course, you can go over here to HR, but I already have this tab open where it's located here. So onboarding is going to be located under HR administration. You'll see onboarding right here in the middle. As a reminder, anytime you're looking for something in the settings, you can always just type the first few letters of that something, whatever it is, into the search here, and it will go ahead and find that for you. So I type in ONB and I can see onboarding here. So just a quick reminder on doing that. Now, before we do some of the things here in onboarding, there are some prerequisites if I'm going to use those aspects of onboarding. So you'll see here, I've got a number of onboarding lists already created. These are broken out by employer. So if you have multiple employers, you will have the option to do onboarding for each employer and different lists for that. So you'll see here under this company, I have these already configured here. Let me go ahead and just select one of them. And you'll see one here. So rather than starting from scratch, I've gone into one where I already have some people or some tasks configured in here. So when you're creating one of these, you do need to, of course, give it a name. Now, the name should be somewhat descriptive of what this is. If you have different onboarding lists for perhaps different departments or job titles or whatever grouping it might be, you probably want to put that in the name there. The welcome message there is going to default. I have the default still in there, but I could change this to have a different message, maybe a customized message for department or something like that, where I want to customize this message. So this is just text. You'll notice I have a token in here for the employee name and stuff, but I can go ahead and edit this message if I want to do that. Now, we do have an option up here for pre-hire, which is a special onboarding for candidates in the recruiting. When I do that here, you'll notice that if I check this, some settings go away because they only apply to employees. Pre-hire tasks are things where there's a pre-hire portal for the candidates to go through and do this, and they'll do these tasks, but they're not going to be doing things like meeting with managers and seeing messages and stuff like that. So if you check that, you'll notice those go away. If I uncheck it, they come back. All right, here you'll see control the task sequence. What that is referring to is down here, I have a variety of tasks added to my onboarding already. Perhaps I would like the system to force the person to go through from the lowest number, like 1, all the way to 7, in order that you see them here. So they would go 1 through 7 here. Now you'll notice I have 2 things, number 4. What would happen there is whichever one I happen to add first as number 4 would come first, and then the other one would be second. Same thing would happen if I had 3 or 4 of them all with the same number, whichever one I happen to add first. You can, of course, reorder these if you need to. So if I noticed, oops, this should be number 6, and instead I type 4, I could go in there and I could fix that and change that order. So that control task sequence would make it so that they need to do this employee information form before they do demographics and EFT sign up, et cetera, working my way down that list there. If I would like the person to be able to go through the list at whatever order they would like, I can leave this unchecked, and then they could just go and just do all of them in whatever order makes the most sense to them. Right here, the people to meet. So this is going to show the names to the candidate and a little picture of the person if they have their picture of people that they should meet with. It will show up below the welcome message, and it will literally say people to meet and have them listed there with their picture. You can add 1 or more here. Very simple, just check the box next to whoever you would like to add, and it puts them in there like this. And of course, you can remove people like that, no problem. Adding or removing like that. All right, down here at the bottom are the actual tasks that can be added to an onboarding. I don't have every single type here, but I'm going to go over how they work. So what you would do is click add to add a new one. Now, when you do this, you're going to see these 5 boxes by default. There's going to be other ones that may show up depending on what you select in these other fields here. Now, you'll see 4 of these are required: name, group, type, and sequence. Do is not required. So first thing you'd want to do is give this a name. Now, it really doesn't matter which order you do these in. You might say, oh, I want to choose the type first, and then I'm going to do the name. That doesn't matter. So I could say complete education history here, even though I've already selected this. I don't need to do that. They just need to be done before I click save. The grouping here is simply for organization on the setup side. So if I want to keep them together as certain types, I can do that right there. And then the sequence, well, you just saw the sequence previously. I had that 1 through 7. So this is the order that I might want them to do it in. So I'm just put 8 because that's the next number there. And then the due date here. So the due date is going to be based off of when the onboarding list is assigned to somebody, starting with their hire date. So if you hire somebody and it's 3 weeks from now before their hire date, it's not going to say 3 days from today. It'll say 3 days from the hire date. However, let's say they started 2 years ago and you assign it to them today, it's going to use 3 days from now as the due date. It won't go back to their original hire date and do 3 days. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. So that's how that works here. So what are these different types? Let's go over these very quickly. I'll just start at the top here. This is where we may need to configure something first. So a course is going to be something under learning management, and you may have different courses set up for things like some type of training or new hire orientation or something like that, that the person needs to go and take that training. So that's going to be what a course is. You would select course, and then over here, you would select the course you would like them to take, like maybe this legal, right? So they need to take this legal course. All right, so that would be an example of a course. A document. So documents are going to be set up under general here. You'll see documents as an option here. And this is going to be a document that they would need to download and read. So you may have different policies that you want to allow them to read. And let's just say this confidentiality agreement, I would like them to read that. So I select that document there. All right, I'm going to skip down and over a couple of these things down to here. A video similar to a document you'll see right here is videos. You may have a video like a welcome to the company message or something like that that you would like them to watch. You would simply select the video that you want them to watch like that. And then of course have the name in there because it just shows the URL here to you in the back end. So you probably want to put the name on that. All right, let's talk about these 3 talent profiles. So those are the screens on the employee's history here. This is their certifications. So you would like them to enter in certifications or at least review the certifications that are on their record because perhaps HR entered them, or if they're hired out of recruiting and they have some certifications on their candidate profile, they may want to review that information. Similar is education. This is going to be their education. They went to some college, they did some other schooling. That would be their education there. And then skills. What skills do they have? They're good at Excel and they know a language or something like that. That's going to be examples of skills. So those 3, you'll notice there's no options for those. It just would take them to those 3 screens or one of those 3 screens based off of what they're doing there. All right, let's go back up to form. So a form, when I do this, you'll notice it added a bunch of other options over here on the right. So first thing I would do is after I select form, select the form that I would like them to complete. Now this does need to be done beforehand. So I already have a bunch of forms in my system. They're set up over here. We did a training on forms before. So you would select that particular form that you want them to fill out. Let's just say handbook acknowledgement would be the form there. Okay, when I do this, I do need to select the workflow approval for this form. So this is going to use a possibly different workflow than you have configured on the form. You may remember that forms have a workflow. So this is going to use an onboarding workflow, which would be configured down here under workflows. And I'll cover that here in a moment. So you'll see I'd have to select the workflow. And that would be your workflow for here. And then here is who is it assigned to do this particular form. I may want to assign it to somebody else. If it's not the employee who's going through the onboarding, maybe it's their manager or another position needs to do this form for this new employee. Perhaps the manager needs to do a laptop request form or something like that. So of course I would choose laptop. Here we go, like key fob. They need to issue a key fob. Maybe HR or the manager does that. So I might go to that position and select a certain position for this. Or if it's the manager, I would select the org level. In mine, I have just one set up. Remember, you may have up to 4. So that manager, one level above the employee or other levels, if there are others you like to use, would be issuing that. I could also name a specific person. So perhaps there's a certain person who's in charge of key fobs. I can't remember the job title, but they are right here. Their accounts payable, Carrie, is going to be doing that. So she would be doing this particular form. All right, if I leave this blank, it's going to be the employee doing the form. So the person actually going through the onboarding. All right, and then public would mean that I would be able to see that as the employee. So whoever I assign this to would be able to see the completed form once it is done and approved. So if I check that box. All right, finally, we're going to look at system task. You'll notice here, I have an option here for which task. This is now a required field. So which task? We have these 6. This is similar to these talent ones, but these are other screens. So their address, bank account information, let's say for direct deposit, EFT, demographics review, dependents and contacts, maybe emergency contacts, etc. They're going to go through an enrollment, or they're going to do their tax withholding. So that would be what you would like them to do there. You would select that right there. You'll notice no other options show up. That just takes them to that particular screen in the system in self-service. They would do that. Now I said education history, so let me just make sure I put that right there, and I'll choose save. So here it is. It's under forms and paperwork, this group. I see I have other groups there that possibly could be under. And there's that new task right there. All right, a couple buttons up here at the top. So these are tasks that would be shown in onboarding. There's a section on tasks where they're going to show up. They are assigned right away. So there is no delay on these things. As soon as you assign the onboarding list, whether it's in the new hire process or perhaps right after you hire them, they're going to see these tasks. You also may have job-related tasks where they're going to do something after a certain period of time. So here I've got 30 days, 60 days, 90 days as different periods. So you can do that. So after 30 days, it's going to show he needs to do this, establish a 90-day goal. At 90 days, he's going to have this other task that says meet with the manager to review the first 90 days. And of course, I have 2. I can add as many as I like. I can remove the ones that are here. I would simply click on add, and I can do that. They don't need to be done like in order. I don't need to say 30, 60, 90. I can do 30, 90, 60, or 60, 90, 30, or whatever. I can put them in whatever order, or I can mix and match them. All right, and then just type in whatever that particular task I would like them to do. All right, this last button up here allows me to assign this onboarding list to 1 or more employees using groups or selecting the actual employees that I want to assign it to. So if I wanted these 2 employees to do this, I could do it like that. And you'll notice they're up here at the top, 1 or more. So it's going to go to Kendra and Marshall. They'll be able to do this onboarding. So very simple. And then you just hit the X if you accidentally selected the wrong people. Of course, I could search by different criteria here, employee number and their name and title. So that's a naming person or using a group to add people to this. As soon as I select the group or I do those names, then I can hit assign, and it's going to assign it to everybody who meets those criteria here. All right, so that is the setup of this and how that is configured there. Now I'm going to actually show you the other option to assign, and that's going over to the employee. So here, this is a new employee I just added a few moments ago, and you'll see I'm on his onboarding screen, which is under advanced profile. Again, I'm not sure where it is. I can always type in ONB, and it's going to go to onboarding. So I can just click on that right there, and it would take me to the screen. Now, if I had assigned something, in the setup, like I just showed you, I could hit this refresh to show what was assigned. If I have not set anything up, of course, that's not going to be anything. It's going to be blank. This also could be done in the new hire process. It's the last step to do the onboarding. So here you'll notice I have a button notify, would notify of any outstanding tasks. Well, obviously he doesn't have any because he doesn't, there's nothing here. So notify is not going to do anything. But once he has tasks, I may want to choose to notify him because he hasn't completed them. But how do we add the tasks? You'll see here, add a list. And I'll go ahead and choose the onboarding checklist that I want to do. I want to just configure new hire onboarding. I just want to make sure I add the same one and click save. So now all of those items are added here. All right, so you'll see there's like that complete education is right there. Here there's a couple of forms I'd like him to fill out. And you'll see these other things that are on here that he needs to do. Now, if there's something on here I don't want him to do, I can click on it and I could remove it by hitting delete. All right, so that's one way to do it. I can also see if he's done something, I could come in and see his status here. So let's say he completed this form, I could click in here and I could see what he actually completed. All right, so it allows me to do that there. I can add an individual task to somebody. If I don't want to just take what's on the list, I want to add something else, I can hit add task and fill in those options there. Now, one thing I think I skipped is, so let me just go back here, is a user task. This is something I could have added in the onboarding, and I apologize, I missed that there. This is something you want to send to somebody else to do for that employee. So let's say you wanted the manager to take the person to lunch. So that might be your task. You'll say, take new employee to lunch. All right, let's go just put this under meetings and communications here. We'll just, doesn't really matter the sequence here because it's actually not going to be an employee task. It's for somebody else. So it's not going to go on a Benjamin's list. He's starting today. So let me just put today's date. And then I will assign it to a certain person if I like, a position. So I can select the position. Or I could say, let's just assign it to his manager one level above. And I'll say, remember to take this new employee to lunch. What will happen is that his manager, whoever that is, will get a notification. They'll have a new task to perform. That task will have Benjamin's name on it. So it'll, right at the very top, it'll say Benjamin Marshall, take new employee to lunch. And they'll see this message, remember to take this new employee to lunch. So they'll know who it is because the name is right on that task they need to perform. And I'll just click save right there. Right, now if I'd like to notify everybody, I could do this. This will send a notification. And you'll see that right there. All right, I did mention I wanted to talk a little bit just real quickly on workflows because I needed to add a workflow for onboarding forms. So here are your different workflows. I already have some configured here. Let me show you that one that said said employee onboarding. I don't need to set up a new one, but you'll see here the type is going to be employee onboarding. Of course, the name might match the type. Maybe it's by department or something, so you might have a more descriptive name in there. The module will always be self-service is the only option for that because that's where onboarding happens. This may be assigned for certain groups of employees. Maybe you're going to say, oh, this group over here called active employees or something. You could do that. This is similar to other workflows we've configured here. If there's an auto approve or auto reject, if somebody doesn't approve it, let's say Chris doesn't do it within the first couple of days after being submitted, maybe you want to auto approve that. You could do that right there. All right. It's active, of course, because I want to use it, but it doesn't need to be active. If I don't want to use it anymore, you can just make it inactive. It doesn't make sense to set up a new one and make it inactive, but you get the idea there. If there's multiple people who might be approving, not just Chris, but Chris and other people with a certain job title or something, I could do that. And then if there's a certain confirmation text that I want to change the default, I could change that text right here. Okay, down at the bottom, you'll notice that the initiator, I don't add that step. That's automatically in here anytime I set up a workflow. This right here, this is the employee that is going to be performing the next step, which in my situation is just the approval. There are other steps that you can add. You'll see here verification, notification, and escalation. Now, verification happens before approval. So maybe in this particular one, somebody's going to verify the form before Chris actually signs it. So you might have something like that on there. So you say, okay, this particular employee or position or group is going to approve that. And you would select like the group or the employee or something like that. All right, so you'll see here, I maybe say, Ted is going to verify it before it goes over to Chris. You'll notice here, it puts it here. I can't move it below approval. Notification can happen anywhere except for the very first thing. It can't be the first thing because the first thing has got to be the person initiating it. But notification is just to send an email to somebody. It could be, here I select the employee, a group, etc. But I want to send them a notification. Like I said, that could be anywhere. Maybe after submission, it notifies somebody. After verification, it notifies somebody else. And after approval, it notifies the third person. You can set up as many different notifications in here as you'd like. And then finally is escalation. What that means is if somebody doesn't perform it, then go ahead and just move it to somebody else automatically. So let's say Chris doesn't perform it. Let's go ahead and move it over to Charlene automatically. So you'll see right here, approval. If Chris does not approve it, I need to tell it how many days. So maybe 2 days later, I want it to automatically go over to Charlene. So after 2 days, if he has not acted on it, it will go to Charlene. If she doesn't act on it, this auto action would happen. All right, so that's how that all works together there. If I don't have escalation here, then this will not be there. That setting won't be there. All right, so you can see how that would work there. Now let's look at this. It's already in use. I can't change it. That's okay. I was messing around with this, so it's already in use, but I would not be able to change when that's in use. You'll see under track all of these ones that are in use. So I already assigned it to Benjamin, so that's why I can't use it. All right, so let's look and see what Benjamin would actually see as the employee in self-service. So where are you going to see that? I'm logged in as Ted, so let me switch to another browser here where I'm logged in as Benjamin. Okay, so let's say I just logged in. Here's my onboarding. Here's the notification. I'll show you that first here on the right. Here's the notification. Please complete the following form. Please complete the following tasks. You'll see these things listed down here. Or he can just click on onboarding. If he clicks this, it'll take him to that form. But this is a nice onboarding. This is the dashboard where he can actually see all those things he needs to do in a nice, clear, big screen versus the little notifications. Nothing wrong with the notifications. Of course, you can click on it, it's an email and stuff. You can click on those. But here you'll see there's that message. Welcome to the team, Benjamin Marshall, blah, blah, blah. From Albert Carpenter, he's the manager. So he comes to the manager. If he did not have a manager assigned at org structure 1, it would not have a name here. It wouldn't send a message from anybody. It would just say, welcome to the team, or whatever your message was. Here's those people to meet with their little pictures, if I have a picture. So I can see that right there. And here are the different tasks I need him to perform. Now, remember, I could have had it be structured so that it controls the task sequence, in which case I have to do this form first, and then demographics, and then EFT, etc. down the list. However, I don't have that configured, so I can click on anything. If he wants to do this complete education history first, he can click on that. Here's his education. He can put in what school he went to or whatever he wants to put in here. And let's just say he went to college and he studied education and the dates that he took it. Let's say he graduated last year. All right. And got a Bachelor of Science in Education and whatever it is. So there you go. You can see how that works. You can submit that. And of course, add other things in here. You may have approvals on here if you like. That's different than onboarding approval. This is an education workflow. If there is one, you can have it would require approval. And then you can mark that as completed. And now you'll see it's checked off. If I look at the graph up here, 1 of 7 is there. Now you might say, wait a minute, weren't there 8? Well, 1 of them is a task for his manager. So it doesn't show that to the employee. As I mentioned, it shows it if I logged in as Albert, I'd see the thing on there to meet with or to take him to lunch. All right, so let me just do a couple other these things so that you can see what this will look like here. I'll do an information form. So this form, I showed you kind of what it looked like here. It's got the person's name in it and everything. He's going to sign the form. and fill in the other information, whatever. This is just a generic form I have out here. So you can see that, and he'll go ahead and mark that. Now, this one's a little unique because it actually goes away because now it's going to somebody else to complete it. He's done his part, and I think Chris was the one who's got to do the next step. So it's gone over to Chris. Right, here's his demographics, and of course now he might come in here and see this. Now I have mine configured so they cannot see this information. It's showing as locked. That's a simple setting in my system. So I don't want the employee editing this information as locked. Even if he clicks update, he cannot change the things that say locked. That's a setting you can configure in your system. Maybe he wants to say that his middle name here is Earl and he goes by Ben. Okay, and fill in some of the things down here. His favorite team is the Cardinals. Okay, and he'll submit that for completion there. Now it's going to mark that off. So you see how that's working there, how it's going through each one. Now, it's possible that he might go to a screen and decide, I don't want to do anything here. I don't want to sign up for direct deposit. I just like getting my check and let's move forward. So he might just mark something as complete, and it's totally acceptable. You could do that right there. Okay, so that's an example of one where he just didn't do anything at all. He just marked it as completed. And let's look here at a couple other ones. Now, this is an example of a document. Now, I believe my link is broken because I did not upload this document. So when I click it, I'm going to get an error message. But what it would do is it would load the document, and he would have the option to download it. Or of course, he could read it and mark it as completed. All right, here's an example of a video. Now, one thing to note about the video is that we can't track, did they actually watch it? So YouTube does not return to us that they watched it, or if they watch part of it and they pause halfway through or something, it doesn't send us that back. So when they mark this as completed, we're basically trusting the employee that they did actually watch it. You'll see they could hit the play button and play this right here if they have it, in YouTube or whatever it is. So that's how that would work there, and they could mark that as completed. If you do want to have them have to watch something, what you can do is put it in as a course using AICC or SCORM. So those are two training file types where you can embed videos and you can have quizzes, and you probably have seen one of these types of trainings before, where you click through and you have to watch a video, maybe it's a minute or two long, and then you do like a little quiz. Now the quiz, of course, is optional. Whoever's designing it can set up, exactly what happens in it. It might just be a video and that's it. But the whole point is that when you use those two technologies, one of those two, AICC or SCORM, those are ones where you can actually track the progress. So if you needed them to, you may want to look into those. Both of those are actually something that you could create yourself, or of course you may have a vendor you're working with that will give you that information on how to do that. So they would have to click through the video, watch the video, and then it would mark it as completed on our side. All right, so that's how that works here. You'll see, of course, he has 5 of 6, 83%. If he comes back out to here, you'll see it says 5 of 6. So this is going to stay here until he completes it. Now, those job-related tasks I mentioned at 30 days, at 60 days, et cetera, they are going to show up here when those thresholds are met. So at 30 days, boom, that one about setting your goals for 90 days is going to show up. And then you can mark that as completed. So that's going to show up right here. Right, and then finally, over here is a list of people with the same job title. So all of these people are food vendor. That's what this person is. He's food vendor. So he may want to meet with these people just to talk about what does it mean to be a food vendor for this company. So you'll see a list of people there, or maybe they need to give him some work. I don't know, whatever it is, but he can meet with them. You see people with the same job titles. All right, so that is what it looks like from the employee's perspective. I'm going to hop back over to the administrative side, just because I want to show you, if I now go to that employee, so back over to Benjamin, I'm going to hit refresh and be able to see what has been done for him. Now, actually, you'll see here, I have two things that are other people doing it. They haven't done those particular items, so they're not done. These are tasks for other people, like lunch with Chris. Chris, whoever it is, would have to log in and mark that as completed. Take new employee to lunch. This guy gets to go to lunch a couple of times. That manager would check this off and then it would be completed there. That course he didn't do, remember he had 5 of 6 done, you'll see this here. If I want to send him a reminder and these 2 people a reminder, I can hit notify and they'll get a reminder that they need to do this. So you'll see that there. We also added in the last version the ability to set up automatic reminders based off of due dates. So you might want to say 2 days before the due date, send a notification to the person who needs to do that. So let's say lunch with Chris, he's got to do it by the 9th. Well, maybe 2 days ahead of time, you want to remind him. So tomorrow he'd get a notification letting him know that he needs to do this lunch. And in this one, this legal course, maybe set it as 1 day before. So on the 12th, he'd get a notification. He, being Benjamin, would get a notification letting him know that he needs to complete this legal course. All right, the things that he actually did complete, let's say these forms, I can actually see those forms and what he filled out. Once the form is actually approved all the way through, I would see that in his documents. Now, this is not approved. The manager has not approved it. So I would go over to his forms and I would see it in the particular folder wherever it resides. So I don't remember where that one is. Maybe it's under personnel, but it's not going to be here until it's actually completed. A quick reminder on forms, if you like to have it go to a specific folder, you could configure that here in your code tables. User code table type. You'll see document location type, right? Those are those folders that I just was showing you there on the left. Here you'll see the names of them here, affirmative action, benefits, etc. You'll see those right there. Pay attention to the codes, because if you use these codes in the next screen I'm going to show you, when you assign a form to one of these types, it'll automatically land in that folder. So like this one, HR forms, remember that code, HR forms, all caps, no space. When I go to document type, you'll see different ones here, like employee information is HR forms, all caps, no space. This one, I-9 file. So if a form I have is set up as an employee information or an FMLA request or something else, when that form is completed all the way through and approved and everything, it'll land in that folder called HR forms automatically. I don't need to do anything. Now I could go move forms if I need to. If I didn't have that set up and I then realized, whoops, that should go in the HR forms, I could come out to the default documents one, which is where it'll go if there's no code there, and I can reassign it. So let's say this key fob one, I really wanted that to be in the HR forms. I could go into it, go into here, tell it to go to HR forms. Let me just this out. And now it's going to land in the HR forms. Okay, you'll see it's gone from this folder. I go down to HR forms. There it is. So you can reassign it. Obviously, probably the best way to do it is when you set up the form, have it go to the particular folder you like by using that document type. And then it would go there, right? So that's probably the best way to do it. But you can always move them if you forget, or maybe you uploaded a document manually and you wanted to move it. That's where you can go in and do that. So this might be your default folder. You can go in there and edit it and put it in the right folder. All right, so that's it for today on the immersive onboarding. Let me go back to my PowerPoint here real quick, and I'm going to talk about upcoming training. So you can see here our schedule for the next couple of months now. In 2 weeks, we're going to be covering Affordable Care Act reporting on the 20th. So if you're in the US, you haven't done your Affordable Care Act reporting, you need some help with that, some guidance, we're going to do training on the 20th of February on that. And then March 5th, we're going to cover our new advanced dashboards. That's a new feature we just released a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to cover how that works. If you're interested in seeing that, that's going to be available for you on March 5th. After that will be Claire. So Claire is on-demand pay. It's something that you could enable for your employees, no cost to the employer, where they can have their paycheck early using on-demand. So we'll talk about how that works in a couple of weeks or a month and a half, really, about how that works. And then finally, offer letters is another new feature that we just introduced a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to talk about those in April. Sounds weird to say it, but we're going to be talking about that in April. We'll talk about the offer letters and how we can generate those using templates and generative AI. So as always, if you do have questions, you can always reach out to our support number here at the bottom or our email address and get some help from our support team. Or if you're working with a partner, you can reach out to your partner. They're experts in the field as well. They can help you out with these things. And if there's anything above their pay grade, they can reach out to us. But whatever way you want to reach out to us to get that help, we appreciate that. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope to see you all again in a couple of weeks.